welcome to the Film Obsessed Couple. I'm Shelley.
And I'm Scott.
If you're a new listener here, we appreciate you choosing us to listen to. We also appreciate our longtime listeners. Scott and I are a married couple obsessed about movies. Scott is more analytical, while I'm a little bit more open-minded. We're unscripted and unfiltered, which means things will get a little wild and crazy, so you better buckle up. And if you enjoy this podcast, Scott, tell them what they can do.
Yes, if you give us 5 stars and leave a review on iTunes, just leave your name and where you're from, and we'll give you a shout out.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about Return to Oz.
Yes. Yeah, apparently it is a sequel. The books, I was going through the books a little bit on Wikipedia, seeing kind of what they were about. This is a combination of like the second and third books in the Wizard of Oz series. The dude wrote like 14 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I was kind of going through just seeing kind of the reviews of them and just reading bits and pieces of them here and there. One of them got criticism because it was considered kind of racist and stuff like that, but it was like the early 1900s. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, I see.
I love H.P. Lovecraft. His horror stories are amazing, but the dude was super racist. So you just kind of... Unfortunately, it was at a time. He was earlier than 1900s, I think. Citation needed on that, but I think it just kind of happens.
With the time,
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, a sequel to Wizard of Oz, of course, and a little bit of trivia here. This movie was in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest sequel made from the original. It took 46 years after the first one to get this one made. This was broken when Bambi 2 was released in 2006, 64 years after the first one.
Dang.
Yeah. So...
Do you think that works, waiting that long?
I don't.
Yeah.
It works in this situation because, we're not really doing like here's the Tin Man and stuff like that. Movies like Ghostbusters and movies like Star Wars, I don't think works. Like, Star Wars came out in the 70s, the new ones came out like a few years ago. It's not because it's like, here's Luke Skywalker as a 70-year-old man, and, well, he really can't do much, so he's hidden on this planet, hates being a Jedi, or Ghostbusters, where it's like, Ghostbusters in the 80s, and now it's in the almost 2020s, and they're all super old, and they're not really going to be a part, because it's like, if you want to make a sequel, you want to see the original characters that you loved.
Absolutely.
So this kind of works, because, I don't think anybody was like, Judy Garland is Dorothy. She needs to be Dorothy. I think they were just kind of like, I understand. Sequel.
So this is a sequel means after the movie. So Dorothy, who was played by Fairuza, is that how you say it? Fairuza Balk. Is she supposed to be like the main Dorothy?
I think so. Yeah, she's a little younger than I read Judy Garland was in the first one.
Yeah, because that's what I was expecting her to be older.
I think I read in the books, and man, it's been a minute since I read the trivia, but I think I read in the books Dorothy is maybe around this age that she is in this movie.
Okay.
And they kind of aged her up for the first one a bit.
Okay, because it happens, because they're rebuilding the house, so it happens right almost...
Yeah.
Almost just like the next day,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely some changes in there. I think Judy Garland... I don't know. Maybe they could have made it work with a younger person, but maybe they just wanted to have her aged up a little bit. Although, read about Judy Garland and you'll know that she was horrifically abused by the studio system, pumping her full of pills and meds to keep her going.
Yeah, that was awful.
You read about her. Did we do a thing about her?
No, I would love to, though.
Yeah.
I'd love to do a whole lore of the Wizard of Oz, because there's just so much that happened on that set that's just fucked up.
Yeah, for those people who don't know, but in the background of one of the scenes in the Yellow Brick Road, you can see something moving in the background, and people were like, it's like a little munchkin that hung himself in the back, but it's almost pretty much been thoroughly debunked, because it's like a swan or some sort of bird moving back there.
Oh, gosh.
From what I saw. But they were like, munchkin hung themselves, and they just happened to be swinging from a tree in the back, and it was like... That's conspiracy theories since that came out, I think, maybe. But Talking about returning characters in this movie, the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow were supposed to have a bigger part in this, except they ran out of money.
Oh no.
They didn't have the money to do it.
I
They're,
was kind of wondering that. I'm glad you brought that up because they're a huge part in
yeah,
the main Wizard of Oz. At least to me, that's what I remember as a kid being like, oh, they're so cute, the characters.
supposedly they were supposed to be big, and then they just kept getting their budget slashed as the movie was going on. So like,
Mm.
well, that the Scarecrow was supposed to have like more of an animated type face, but then their budget kept getting slashed, so they made it to where like his face kind of changes when they cut away. He's like, "Oh, he's happy," and then they cut to Dorothy for a second, cut back, and he's like, "Oh, he's sad," So they just worked around it the best they could.
Yeah. Did you read about how TikTok, the little mechanical dude, I didn't realize there was a guy inside of it, like a real person.
Yeah, and they said he's like upside down.
Yeah, he had to walk backwards and like look in this little tiny screen to see where he was going.
That is bizarre.
It's insane.
Which is amazing for these movies in the 80s.
Yeah, we'll post this picture that I found that just shows this guy pretty much putting his head in his crotch and he's belted down so he doesn't move because he's pretty much the round part of the belly.
Yeah.
But anyway, not to go too much I just thought that was
It
fascinating.
is very fascinating, and when I read that and pictured it in my head, for some reason I thought he was like standing on his hands upside down. The way I just pictured it, and I was like, that would have been very uncomfortable. Even more so. One of my favorite bits of trivia on this movie here is that Walter Murch directed this movie. This was the last movie he directed. He just apparently had the worst time in the world with directing this because of the studios, and they didn't have any confidence in him and were going to fire him at one point. And he went to his friends for help. He was like, "Oh, you guys, can you please say something to the studios?" His friends were Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
Oh.
And they were like, "Hey, leave him in." And they were like, well, yes, sir, Mr. Lucas. Yes, sir, Mr. Spielberg.
Those are good friends to have.
Yeah, for sure. He's like, well, my friends say I should be a director. And they're like, yeah, who's your friends are? Steven Spielberg and George Lucas? And they're like, fucking right you are, sir.
We're keeping you in.
Apparently, this is the only movie Walter Murch ever directed. He still works. He's in like the technical side of everything now, but I guess he just had the worst time directing this movie.
Yeah, this movie in a nutshell was described as dark, magical, and imaginative.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Very dark, which I meant to look it up, but I know that there's a video game called Alice, which was kind of in the early 2000s for computer PC, if I remember right. I never played the whole thing because I was never just a computer gamer, but something to do with her being in an insane asylum. So I wonder if that game kind of took inspiration from this.
Maybe.
Because where we are in the movie here, it's pretty much basically like a month or months after the first movie, basically.
Yeah, they only have half the house built.
Yeah, and
rebuilt, I should say.
Dorothy, for some reason, has PTSD. Well, not for some reason. I mean, she almost got killed a few times. She's got PTSD from the first movie, I guess.
Yeah, she literally cannot sleep.
Yeah, it shows her laying in bed just looking outside the window all night. Which, the first movie, everyone's always like, I saw that movie when I was a kid, and those flying monkeys and the witch scared the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie was like, let's up the ante.
Let's see how many nightmares we can give these kids.
Yeah.
Like, if you are having problems, you're going to get electric shock treatment.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of the main opening of the movie is Dorothy is just super depressed, and Auntie Em and Uncle Henry are discussing taking her to some doctor they see in the local paper that can heal people.
Yeah, they have like a newspaper clipping cut out, which newspapers in this time creep me out.
Why is that?
I don't know why. Maybe it's all the bold around it.
Oh, yeah.
And the lettering. They've just, for some reason, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
It makes me feel nostalgic. I'm just like, wow, look at that time frame. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you can read the newspapers in like Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, and you kind of see them like that. And I'm just like, man, it was so different back then.
Mm-hmm.
But see, I thought that the doctor was, spoiler alert, the doctor and the nurse's aide or whatever is not on the level. But I thought the doctor was in charge But Uncle Henry here says, you know, I don't see how we could pay money to this lady to get
Mm.
Dorothy fixed, basically.
So the head nurse is who's in charge, I guess.
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe she's the one that's like putting all that information out there trying to get people to come to him. But it does make me laugh here because at some point during this time in the movie, Auntie M says, you know, oh, Dorothy, you know, you're just not right anymore. You don't sleep at night and you're no use to me in the morning for helping. So we're going to take you to this doctor. Just like, you don't help out around the house.
You're no use to me.
Yeah. We do see Dorothy kind of walking around the farm at this point. Uncle Henry has become like super depressed, I guess, since the tornado has happened. Because we see him sitting in the half finished house that he's building since the first one was damaged. And Dorothy says to Auntie M here, like, oh, you know, he says his leg is so hurt. And Auntie M's like, yeah, his leg healed a long time ago. So he's just,
Oh.
I guess he's just bummed that it has to build the new house or they lost everything. I don't know.
Well, she also mentioned that they had to take out like 3 mortgages just
That
to
would do it.
rebuild. And he's probably just depressed because he's got to rebuild this house and try to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, that'll do it for sure. I didn't catch the mortgage line.
Mm-hmm.
So you take all the time you want, Uncle Henry. You drink in that half abandoned house.
Yeah, whatever you got to do.
Dorothy's kind of walking around the farm, and we get introduced to this chicken, Belina, who does not lay eggs at this point.
Yeah.
And Dorothy finds like a little key. Because one thing we didn't say at the beginning was that when she's laying in bed at night, she sees like a shooting star fall. And
oh, yeah.
the next day, when she's kind of walking around the farm doing chores or whatever, she finds a key like buried in the hay next to the chickens. And she immediately is like, O-Z, Oz. And I'm like, this just looks like a key with a couple of holes in it. I didn't get O-Z from that.
That's imagination.
Yeah, I guess so. So I was curious kind of what time frame that this took place. And they do say it here around here where it's like kind of the end of 1899.
Okay.
Because Auntie M and Dorothy are going to the doctor the next day or so, or even that same day even, in this horse and buggy. And I was like, what year is this?
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, which I don't know if Wizard of Oz may have been the first movie in color. Hang on here. Wizard of Oz was not the first movie made in color, but it did revolutionize the use of colors in movies.
I see.
So that was kind of like a huge deal at the time. When she goes to Oz and everything's in color, and it's like, whoa, look at that shit.
Whoa, so vivid.
And poor Toto, we do see him around here at some points here. He does chase after Dorothy in the horse and carriage, and, you know, she's like, no, Toto, you're not in this movie, I'm sorry. And he starts yelling like, I was gonna get paid.
We didn't have time to train you. We didn't have the funds. You got to stay back.
And I was like, is that the original Toto? And it's like, no,
No.
not at all. This is Toto's great, 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 great grandson.
They were like, any fluffy dog will do. Just, it has to be fluffy.
I just imagine the director being like, oh my gosh, can we get the original Toto? And the director being like, no.
No.
Did you know that this movie is in the Guinness Book of World Records for being like 40 years after the first one? God, no. I just imagine finding Toto in like some celebrity swanky like old folks home.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, Toto, can you come out of retirement for us here? He's like, I'm not as young as I used to be. I would. He's like, I have trouble remembering my lines. He's like Jack Nicholson now. I have trouble remembering my lines these days, but I do love going to Lakers games.
Gonna need a stunt double to do all my tricks.
Well, apparently Jack Nicholson goes to Lakers games, and he's in his 80s, and there has been talk of him having, like, dementia or whatnot. And there was a video going around where they were like, Jack, do you have any movies in the works? And he was like, no. Like,
No.
not at all.
Good. He's 80. He just needs to, enjoy his life.
Yeah. I'll have to show you the photos, but there were photos that came out a long time ago of him, like, on a boat. And he's, like, swimming in the ocean while smoking a cigarette. And he's eating this gigantic sandwich on a boat.
Nice.
It's like, just enjoy your life.
Yeah.
It's like, Toto, can you come be in the new movie? Not at all. got a Lakers game on Friday. They go to this clinic, and Dorothy is basically telling them everything. Auntie M's like, oh, she keeps telling stories of Tin Men and Cowardly Lions and the first movie for people that haven't seen it.
A recap.
Yeah, well, Dorothy's kind of giving a recap here to the doctor, and she's like, and then we went down the yellow brick road and into the Emerald City. And the doctor's like, oh boy, gonna have to turn the voltage up on this one quite high.
Well, and she gets a little dark because she starts talking about how the Tin Man, how he became the Tin Man.
Yeah, I remember hearing that a long time ago or something kind of dark. But do you remember what she says here?
Yeah. She said that it was a guy that cut off his leg, and the witch enchanted his axe that he cut off his leg with, and he just kept cutting his limbs off. He just kept cutting and cutting, and then they cut her off whenever she started talking about his head.
Oh,
The doctor's like, okay, that's enough.
this is a kid's movie, Dorothy. Thank you.
We are done with that. And I read some things about Feruza, and she's 10 years old in this movie, and she acted like an adult. Like she was just dominating the screen, and I thought she did very well.
I think so
10
too.
years old.
I think she's really good in this movie, yeah. And I read something in the trivia of like she was only able to work like 4 hours a day or something like that. And
Maybe.
she had to do school for a bit, but yeah, I mean she did great. I don't know if this was her very first movie she ever did, but we'll get to a line in the later in the movie that made me kind of laugh. But
another thing the doctor says is he's like, just in another couple months we're going to be in the 1900s. But why is it not freezing outside? They left and it's like green grass. I don't know where the hell they're at. Are they
Kansas?
Oh yeah.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Where the hell are they at? Where does this take place? Jesus Christ. Yeah. So they're in Kansas. It should be fucking cold.
I guess so. I don't know. But he does say 1900s, the age of electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Electricity in every home. Like, he's a madman. But he does bring out this machine, and he's like, this machine helps with people's thoughts and bad dreams or just excess electricity in the brain. This guy who plays the doctor, and later we'll see the Gnome King, has been in things. The only thing I really know him from, I'm sure if I went through his IMDb, basically the theme of this episode is I am not prepared.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know if this is her first movie. I don't know what else he's been in. I should have read the trivia again. But
that's why there's editing.
yeah. This guy was in the movie Spawn. He played Spawn's kind of like mentor for a bit, Cagliostro. But he brings out this machine, and he's like, oh, this machine helps with bad dreams and excess electrical activity in the brain, because the brain is just one gigantic electromagnetic field. And he's like, oh, and don't be afraid of this machine that's going to shock the shit out of you. If you look here, these are his eyes, and if you look here, this is his nose, and he's got a mouth.
With a little tongue sticking out.
Which I guess this is supposed to be kind of like TikTok. Because you got to look at the things that are kind of...
Yeah.
The first movie when she wakes up from there are parallels from the other world into Oz. Like the evil lady that wants to kill Toto at the beginning of the first movie is the Wicked Witch. Later, the three farmhands that help her at the beginning of the movie are the wizard, the Cowardly Lion, Tin Man, Scarecrow.
Okay.
So look for kind of things like this, because he's like, well, this robot has a face. So I guess maybe that's supposed to be TikTok, like an allegory for TikTok.
That would be the only one that would make sense.
Well, I'll tell you in a second another.
Oh.
And so Auntie M's like, look, you're going to be here for the night, going to get your shit scrambled, and then we'll be back tomorrow to pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, will you bring Toto? And she's like, well, he's not really in this movie, but I'll see. He asked for too much money.
Yeah, we can't afford him.
And she's like, sure. And she's like, you'll probably be so doped up you won't even know. We cut to the end of the movie, and she's just holding like a blanket. It's like, I love you, Toto.
Drooling.
Yeah, I love you so much. So this nurse, her name's Nurse Wilson, Trivia on this as well is that I pointed in my notes, but her outfit that she's wearing has like pointy shoulders.
Yeah, me too.
But she is supposed to be similarly dressed as the Wicked Witch in the first movie.
Oh, well, she is wearing black.
Yeah, kind of black, but I'm not sure exactly how the outfit looks compared, but
No, me neither.
does have like the pointed shoulders.
I thought it was like for the time. That's kind of a little edgy.
Yeah,
She could be a little goth-like.
I know. Yeah, I don't know. They're a happening place here. This doctor wants to embrace new technology. She's, listening to the Smiths before they're ever invented.
Mm-hmm.
But they take Dorothy, and Dorothy has her little lunch pail that she has with her, and the nurse is like, I'll take that from you.
I call her Nurse Ratchet.
Yeah,
I
pretty
didn't
much.
realize her name at the beginning. I'm like,
I just kept calling her the nurse's aide or whatever, but they lead her down a hallway, and she keeps hearing screeching noises, kind of like the Wheelers later.
Oh.
That's going to blow your mind. I've got another one in a second.
Oh, wow. I'm excited.
One thing we didn't actually talk about, though, is when she's in the room looking at the machine, the doctor is talking to Auntie M. She sees a woman's reflection in it, in the machine's, glass.
Yes, like another little girl.
Yeah, she looks back behind her, and there's, a girl outside of the office that they're in.
Which, I mean, this is she wasn't shocked. She's just like, oh, there's another little girl.
You think that's crazy? I've seen flying monkeys. Make your hair go white. Make your butthole tighten up.
But the screeching of that bed, I mean, it's any kind of nightmare, and just looking at that gurney.
Yeah.
I don't know, this old-timey stuff just freaks me out.
Yeah. I know. When I play these games like Bloodborne or The Lies of P now, they've got kind of like those wheelchairs with the glass vials and stuff like that. Does that freak you out?
Yes.
I don't know. That Victorian area kind of stuff is very interesting, but also, yeah, very freaky.
The wooden, wheelchairs with the high backs. Ugh.
Yeah, and the glass.
Can't do it.
But glass vials that, have the liquids and stuff in them.
Yeah, if I ever go to some place that's supposedly haunted, if they just have one of those, that's all it takes.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. And they put her in this room, and the nurse is like, oh, you can rest here. We will come back and get you when it's time. And they leave, and Dorothy sees Auntie M leaving. She's, looking through the window on the second floor and sees Auntie M, riding away. Again, so the girl from outside comes back in again, and she is carrying a pumpkin, a carved pumpkin.
Yeah.
And she says, it'll be Halloween soon, which never comes back.
And then I'm like, but in a couple of months, it's going to be the new year.
Well, yeah, it's October.
Which I guess October. I was thinking more November. Okay, never mind.
But she gives him the carved pumpkin, and Dorothy's like, well, I'm here because I can't sleep. And I would have assumed at this point they would have just given me some heroin or some morphine or something to get me to sleep, but I'm here getting shocked to shit.
Yeah.
There is a funny moment where Dorothy turns the lights on because it's electric, and the lights come on like we do now. Turn the switch and the lights come on, and Dorothy's freaked out by it. She's like, "Wah!
What kind of witchery is that?
A devilry!" But she sits on the bed and she can hear the gurney squeaking towards her.
Yeah.
And the door opens and the nurse comes in and they tie her down to the gurney, and she's like, why do I need to be tied down? And I was like, well, it's just better this way.
It's for your safety.
Yeah, she's immediately suspicious of this. And Dorothy's like, did I hear someone scream earlier? And I was like, no. No, not at all.
No, everybody's happy here.
So they bring her into the room, and the doctor's got the electrical machine ready, and he's like, oh, Dorothy, I'm going to put these basically earphones over your head here, and I'm going to crank this shit up, and you'll forget all about who you are. Forget about the memories.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and the power goes out.
No, son of a bitch.
Which it could be argued, if you want to be a conspiracy theorist about movies, like all these people, where it's like, did he really turn the switch and all this is now just a dream? I hate that when people are like, there's a thing, spoilers for Breaking Bad, but at the end of the Breaking Bad, there's the very final episode at the beginning is him breaking into a car and waiting for cops to drive by so he can go back to Albuquerque. Someone had a theory where it was like, oh, he got found by the cops right there and was dead, got killed in a shootout, and everything that happens in the rest of that episode is just his dying dream. And I'm like, that sucks.
I don't like that at all.
No, I don't like that. Where like everything is just a dream.
Cut this all out. Nobody needs to hear that. I'm
Really?
kidding. I'm
Okay.
kidding.
I was like, okay. I gave a warning. You did look this up at the moment because the nurse is like, I'll check the generator. And I'm like, they've got generators?
I'm
But
like 1900s? What?
yeah, but you said they came out in like, what, the 1860s or something?
Yeah, I can't remember. I didn't write it down, but it is legit.
Yeah.
They just came out, and this facility seems pretty high tech, so I can imagine that they would have that. Later, she's got a flashlight that,
Mhm.
was just created around this time too, so they have all of the gadgets.
Yeah, because it's right here. So basically, they run. The girl comes back again. I kept calling her Window Girl. Comes back, frees Dorothy. They run out, and it's like storming super hard out. Nurse Wilson follows them down to like a riverbank, and Window Girl falls in the river, and Dorothy follows after her.
Yeah.
And Nurse Wilson is like, "Come back here!" And this is where she has the flashlight.
Right. But
And
it did not look like the flashlights at the time just looked like a tube.
it's like a yellow plastic flashlight. No one will notice. But Dorothy keeps swimming down the riverbank, and she can't find the Window Girl. So she finds this like wooden box kind of plank thing and gets inside of it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't even know what it would be. It just looks like a pallet with some wooden rails.
Yeah, kind
or
of.
something.
It looks like a box with the top off of it.
Yeah.
But she gets in and kind of like floats, and there is a cut where she's floating in what looks to be like an ocean. And when she wakes up the next morning, Bellina, the chicken, is with her, and Bellina is actually talking.
Yes. I mean, this chicken puppet is amazing.
I know, and I read online that a lot of them were like not puppets, but real. There was some puppets here and there for like when it was talking, but like they had chickens for when she was carrying it that would be more calm. They had chickens that would be like freaked out. They had other chickens that they just had a chicken for kind of everything. Because this little girl is just walking around carrying a real live chicken.
Right. Yeah. No, the cuts when it is a puppet and then a cuts when it's real. I mean, you really can't tell the difference.
No, it's a good looking puppet.
Mm-hmm.
This must have been when they had some money.
I love, this is probably my favorite character.
Yeah, you were laughing quite a bit at her.
Yes, I love Bellina. She's got a great sense of humor. She's super funny.
Yes, absolutely. Well, they land and they're like, "Oh, we must be in Oz." And Dorothy's like, "Oh my God, we're in the deadly desert." Don't remember that from the first one.
Yeah, no, me neither. I mean, it's been a while, but I'm like, I don't think I remember that. But
Yeah, Dorothy's like, "Stay on the rocks, and just don't fall into the sand, because you'll die."
you'll turn to stone.
Yeah, so she carries Bellina with her, and they're like jumping from rock to rock. Some of these rocks like have animated eyes on them.
Because they're real people, because they fell in the sand
Oh, is that what they say?
and they turned to stone. Probably.
Shit, I missed that. Because we see the rocks have personalities, and we see like a rock kind of talking to a voice off screen. It's like, "Master, the girl is here and she has a chicken." And he's like, "Bah, bah, 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 that's your fucking chicken."
They hate chicken. Like, what is it about a chicken that...
Well,
I mean, I guess toward the very end
Yeah.
we find out, but still.
he's like, "I'm allergic to eggs. Get that thing the fuck out of here."
Which these rocks, they are claymation,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of had a question for you on the claymation. Do you think it works well in a movie, or should they just be claymation is all it is? Does that make sense? Like, here's claymation with live people.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other movies with claymation. It's all claymation. Everything is claymation.
I think it works with live people. I mean, I don't know how you would do this movie with claymation completely.
No. Oh, no. It would be, yeah. No, it's weird. I just wasn't sure if it would work well with movies.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would work pretty well.
I did not like this claymation.
Well, the rocks, I think, is just kind of animation over like they just drew little faces on the rocks.
Oh. Well, yeah, the rocks that she's jumping on and stuff.
Yeah, but later, you're right. Later, there is some claymation.
Right.
But you don't think that part worked?
No.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Okay.
They come across the house from the first one, and Dorothy's like, "Oh my God, this is the house from the tornado," and that's where I lived
Oh,
up
yeah,
there.
yeah,
and Dorothy sees the yellow brick road is all destroyed, and she's like, what the fuck is going on? Oh,
Yeah.
God. And they follow the yellow brick road, you know, the pieces of it at least, and see that leads them to the Emerald City, which is fucking destroyed.
Yeah, she's like, I'm gone a day and shit falls apart.
I left you guys with, you know, you guys had it a good.
Everybody was happy. Things were fine.
It was a self-sustaining society, and what the fuck happened?
Jeez.
They get there, and this place is like 1980s New York. There's graffiti everywhere, and it says like "Beware the Wheelers."
Yeah. That's
And-
kind of scary.
Yeah, the chicken's like, "Wheelers? I don't know what that means."
That's exactly how she talks. That's so funny.
They find some headless statues of women because everything in this Emerald City has been turned to stone. But they find some headless statues. They find the Tin Man. They find the lion, which is actually a real fucking lion instead of just a dude in a costume.
Mm.
But they've all been turned to stone, and she's like, "What the fuck happened here?"
And the chicken just says, that's just plain careless.
Yeah, she's like, "They're headless. But I'm not plain careless."
Oh, I just love her.
This is where we get introduced to what a lot of people have said was their nightmares. We get introduced to the Wheelers, which they are kind of announced their arrival because they are the screeching of the gurneys.
Mm-hmm.
And when you first see them, it looks like they're all bent over and they've got like their head with like a face painted on it, but it's like the head of a guy's helmet because he lifts his head up and it's got like there's the guy's face.
Yeah, so it's like on the very top of their heads. So when they're looking down on where they're going, you see this scary ass face.
Yeah.
And then they lift their head up and then you see their real face. And their arms are extended.
Yeah, they like put their arms into like these long roller skates almost
Yeah,
to make them look longer.
because there's wheels, wheeler,
Mm.
wheels on their hands and feet. And that's how they get around.
And to make them even more freakier, they communicate by like screeching.
Mm.
Like Dorothy runs into an alley in one season and he's like,
I'm like, oh, okay.
"Are you having fun, kids?"
Don't you just love this?
Yeah, well, Dorothy runs down an alleyway and is cornered, and they're starting to come at her, and Bellina's like, "Hey, there's a key here. You didn't happen to find a key earlier, did you?" And
Mm.
wouldn't she know it, the one she found works, and it opens up a little kind of like room in this alleyway that she goes and closes the door. And the Screechers behind her like, "What are you doing here, Dorothy? The Gnome King is going to find you." And she's like, "I don't know who the fuck the Gnome King is." And they're like, "Shut the fuck up. Everybody knows who the Gnome King is." And they're like, "You have to come out of here sooner or later." They said something about, "We'll rip you into pieces. This is a kid's movie."
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, this part was kind of scary because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're trapped.
So we see who could technically, I guess, be another Tin Man, but his name is TikTok. And like the video platform, he is only able to work for like 30 seconds.
I was kind of like, is this where they got it from?
I don't know. But he is a tiny little robot. He's got a head, a gigantic midsection, and tiny stumpy little legs and arms.
Yes, he's the cutest thing.
But he's the Royal Army of Oz, and I'm like, come on, how could this thing protect anything?
I know.
It's like that show BattleBots. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there used to be a show in the 2000s where people would make their own kind of little robot machines and battle them.
Oh,
And there was one that someone made that basically it was just like a spinning orb on top, like his midsection, and it destroyed pretty much everything because like the thing got spinning so fast that when something would try to touch it to damage it, the other thing would go flying.
Nice.
So maybe they got that inspiration from this. So maybe it would be a good defender because, you know, BattleBots showed me that I guess that works.
Yeah, and he's cute. He's got this mustache that moves whenever he talks.
Yeah,
And little springs on his little stubby legs, and he kind of walks like a
very fat person.
penguin.
Penguin's better. Yeah, let's say penguin. I was going to say he walks like Roger from American Dad. He's like, side to side.
Well, he does have a pretty good pot belly,
Yeah.
so.
She reads the instructions on him, but basically he has a thing where he has to be wound up. His mind has to be wound up, and his action.
Yeah, he's got like a winding thing for each thing. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
I know. He's like, "I've got to get action." And she's like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "No, my back, action."
This is a kid's show. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he says he was told by the Scarecrow to stay here for her, and she's like, "Well, the Scarecrow sent this key to me, obviously, because scenes needed for explanation." But I guess when she left, Scarecrow was crowned like the King of Oz.
Okay.
She says something like that, but
I missed that.
so she winds him up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I stayed here for so long waiting for you that my mind ran down.
Mm.
So I couldn't get action, and then I stopped being able to think." Which would be horrifying if you think about it.
It doesn't last long.
No,
That's
again,
for
like
sure.
30 seconds.
Yeah. And you wind him up, and he's like, then you
Yeah.
gotta keep winding.
Well, they leave. He says, he's like, "Oh, I'm here to help you." And so they leave this little room, and, he's like, "I'm going to take on all of the Screechers." And it's basically like I just described. His little arm section starts spinning round and round, and the Screechers keep trying to attack him. And when they do, they go flying and get hurt. And he's got like the lunch pail that she found in the tree in his arm, and he's like using it as a club.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And they capture one because the other ones go flying or leave, and they're like, "What the hell happened here?" And the Wheeler's all like, "Oh, the Gnome King, he conquered the Emerald City, and he turned everybody to stone, and the only person who knows where the Scarecrow is Princess Mombi."
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, Mombi!" The Pee-wee. "Zombie!" And TikTok's like, "All right now, you just tried to kill us, but please behave and I will let you go." And it's very funny because the Wheeler rides off and he's like, "I never behave!"
Mm.
So they go into the palace, and looks quite a bit different than the palace in the other one, but it's this gigantic throne room with a woman sitting in the room playing a mandolin.
Yeah. This is very elegant looking.
And the woman's like, "Oh, visitors, please give me a moment. I'll put something on more appropriate." And she's like, "Your friends will stay here. You come with me while I put on something more appropriate."
And this sounds a little scandalous.
Excuse me?
What are you gonna? What's appropriate? Like, what are you talking about? You can put some overalls on?
Well, it becomes worse than what you could imagine because they go into the back and there's all these women's heads in glass cases.
Yeah.
And this woman, like, opens one, pops her head off that she's wearing, and puts the other one on.
Oh, that's a kid's movie.
Yeah, it's creepy because the heads are all looking at them as they walk by, like looking at Dorothy.
Yeah, which I mean, you can kind of tell how this is made. They just have some women standing with their head around this
Like in the case.
case. Yeah, but it's still kind of neat. Like it's a neat concept that she can just switch out her heads. I don't know what the purpose is,
Well,
except to look different.
I guess because we later find out that the Gnome King promised her 30 beautiful women heads if she helped him. Now, why? I don't know, but if you put two and two together here, the headless people, stone people that they walk past are the women that she has taken the heads from.
Mm-hmm.
But this is pretty mean, but I also have something kind of funny to say about it is Mombi here is like, you won't be very pretty in the... hang on here, she says.
Yeah.
She's like, "You'll be pretty in the future. Not beautiful, but I will go ahead and keep your head." And I gotta tell you, when Fairuza Balk grows up, she does have a kind of a weird, like not weird, but like a different look to her.
Yeah, her smile. She has a very big.
Well, like a big
mouth.
smile, but she looks kind of punk rock, like goth.
Yes.
So she does look very different from like what you would think like a beautiful movie star would look. She has an interesting face.
I mean, oh, exactly.
So it kind of came true where it's like, you will grow up and you will be pretty. You will look different, but I will keep your head.
Yeah, she's like, I'll lock you in the tower until you're old enough, and then I'll take your head.
Yes. After you've starred in the movie The Craft, also on this podcast, then I will take your head.
Yes, we did an episode about that.
They try to help Dorothy. Bellina tries to help, and Mombi grabs her. TikTok tries to help as well, but he runs down, of course, right when he's wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just said, they lock her in the tower, and Dorothy looks out at on this little terrace in the tower and sees the Gnome King's mountain in the distance. We do see a painting of everybody from the first movie, so I guess before she clicked her heels 3 times, she stood for 6 hours for a painting to be made of everybody.
Well, yeah.
"I have to get home, but first, Let's get this painting.
Let's do a painting. Can you just start with me and then fill everybody in after?
Yeah, I've got a. Well, she leaves in a hot air balloon. I don't know if it's because, or if she just clicks her heels. But in the first one, I think she leaves in a hot air balloon. Maybe she does click her heels. You know what? It's been a minute.
I don't know.
It's been a hot minute. As Dorothy's kind of searching around this tower, she sees a scarecrow with a pumpkin head type thing.
Yeah. And I mean, his name is called Pumpkinhead. So.
Jack the Pumpkinhead, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which in the trivia, Tim Burton, who directed Edward Scissorhands and Batman, but he was a producer on Nightmare Before Christmas, said this character inspired his character in that, Jack the Pumpkin King.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. And he has a real kind of light, wispy voice. He's like, "Hello. My mom made me to scare off the evil witch Mombi."
Yeah, the chicken says, "Who is this, a man or a melon?" I'm like, ah.
I love this chicken.
I love you.
And he was like, Mombi was about to kill me until she was like, you know what? Let me fucking try this weird ass shit here and sprinkle some of this Give Life powder and turn you into a real thing. And she did, and I was alive, and she's like, oh my God, what have I done? I have made this abomination, and she locked me in this tower.
Yeah, because you kind of get a close-up view of him, and he's just sticks that are tied together.
Yeah.
With rope. So he's just a very skinny, frail-looking guy. And he's got a polka-dotted shirt, a green scarf, red suspenders, and purple pants with like colorful patches.
Mm-hmm.
So he is very kid-like to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this fits the kid movie part of this.
Yeah. And she is putting him back together here, like tying his arms back together because he's kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
Very freaky. He's like, oh, I don't know where my mother is. He goes, are you my mother? She's like, no. And later he's like, can I call you mother even though I know that you're not? And she's like, yes, you can.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
I'd be like, no, you can't.
I don't know.
So they come up with a plan, and Dorothy's like, well, TikTok reaches around the door that Mombi has locked them in the tower and unlocks it for her. And she's like, all right, I've got a plan. And they're walking down, and Jack, Pumpkinhead, when he's walking, I said he's like walking like he hasn't had, his drugs in a while. He's like, oh man, I don't feel good, man. I don't feel good. Like, you got any stuff, man? It'll make me straight. And she's like, okay, I've got to wind up TikTok, and I've got to give you an injection every 7 hours. Be better if you shot me up, man. I don't feel good. But she goes down, winds up TikTok, and tells them a plan that she's got, because we didn't say in the tower, when she's looking around, she finds the head of like this moose creature, which is called a Gump.
Oh, yeah.
Not Forrest Gump.
No, of course not.
So she tells TikTok the plan. He starts to walk away, and then she's like, well, in order to get out of here, I've got to get the powder for my plan. I've got to go into the Queen's room and get the key, because Jack said it's in like locker 31 or something at the bus station.
Yes. That's it.
So TikTok goes back upstairs. She goes into the Queen's bedroom. She sleeps without her head for some reason.
Yeah. It's so weird.
Maybe it's like sleeping with gum or something, She's waking up and her head's like off the bed and her body's still in bed or something. She's like, I roll around too much. My head comes off. But she's trying to get this key that Mombi sleeps with, and, she gets it. She keeps almost waking her up, but she ends up getting it. And back in the tower, like, everybody's making this weird thing with like couches, and they take like palm tree leaves and stick it on the sides, and they're tying it together, and they're all putting it together, and TikTok is like, all right, and this has got to go here, and we never landed on the moon, and JFK was never assassinated, and they're like, oh my God, his mind's winding down.
No, his mind is going.
Yeah, the moon is made of cheese.
Because the cow went over the moon?
Yeah, well, he starts all the QAnon stuff. JFK Jr. is still alive, living under the airport.
Oh, jeez.
And they're like, oh shit, and so Dorothy goes into the locker at the bus stop and opens it up and finds this powder in like this little kind of ingredients type can.
Yeah.
It says like, Give Life powder. And the witches, I'm assuming her original head is in there. And by grabbing this can, Dorothy wakes the head up, which wakes the body up. So they're all running. Dorothy runs back up to the tower, says they've only got a few minutes or something until the witch comes, and the body has its original head on, is chasing after her. So basically what they've created is they've tied together a bunch of couches, put the Gump's head on the front, put like these leaves out like wings, and they sprinkle the powder on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, it doesn't work. And they were like, well, why don't you read the instructions on the bottle? And she's like, wiggity wham wham zoozle, and the thing comes to life.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
There you are. Yeah, it's like this moose Pegasus.
Yeah, it's like the body is all these couches, and they were like, please fly. And he's like, well, I don't know if I can fly.
I've never flown before.
They're like, well, you've got wings. And he's like, I guess I can try that. It's like, my mama always said, like, fly. God damn it, fly. And he takes off. And so they're flying over Oz, and the Wheelers are chasing them, and they get over the desert, and the Wheelers, one of them goes into the desert and turns into, like, sand almost.
Yeah, no, he turns into a stone.
Yeah, it's pretty freaky looking.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, how far do you think you can fly us, Gump? And he's like, I don't know about that, sir. I'm not well made.
They talk about him turning. He's like, well, I've never done that before. I don't think I can.
He's like, I was never made to turn. They're like, fly, Gump, fly. It's like, did I ever tell you about my girlfriend, Jenny? She was a prostitute. They're like, oh my God, Gump, just fly. So as they're flying, the ropes start to kind of untie that they have around his body, and
oh shit.
Dorothy falls asleep. Jack the Pumpkinhead is like, good night, Mom. She's like, I'm gonna sleep with one eye open with that guy.
Like, oh, you are creepy. You're not cute anymore. You're freaking me out, man.
You're freaking me the fuck out, Jack. The Pumpkinhead was not good, and your stick body is even weirder. Now you're calling me Mom. So in the morning, they're still flying, and everything starts to fall apart. The ropes untie, and Jack, they start to come apart, and Jack, like, his head falls off and starts falling down. They're really high in the air, and she's like, Gump, please, can you turn? He's like, I wasn't made for turning, but I'll try. And so they try, and the whole thing comes apart, and they all start falling, and Dorothy grabs Jack's head as they're falling, and Jack's like, I'm so sorry, Mom. She's like, well, that's okay, Jack. There's nothing we can do about it now. I'm like, wow, just very accepting in your death here.
Yeah, and they, they fall just right, just like in every movie.
They fall on a mountain, and you're like, they should be dead.
So elegant, The couch catches Dorothy, and, the others land just right. It's fine.
Yeah, and then Gump's like, I don't have a body anymore, but I should have, because I had me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
Isn't this when the chicken gets into Jack's head?
Yeah, she kind of is staying inside of Jack's pumpkin head here, because they've landed on the Gnome King's mountain, and we see again a cutaway of like a rock talking to the off-screen Gnome King, and they're like, Dorothy has landed on the mountain, and he's like, is there a chicken around here? I'm allergic to chickens, man. I'm not fucking around. And he's like, no, I don't see a chicken anywhere.
Are they scared of salmonella? Oh my gosh, if you don't cook them right.
Oh, he's like, you cut the heads off those things, they still run around. It freaks me the fuck out, man. This is the 1800s. They have not explained why that happens. It's fucking crazy. No, it's the 1800s. You know what causes that? Devilry. That's what causes that.
Satan.
The rocks start talking to Dorothy here on this mountain, and she's like, oh, we gotta give Scarecrow back, and they're like, we're not gonna do that. She's like, well, if you don't give him back, I'm here with an army, and we're gonna take you out, and the rocks start kind of crumbling, and she falls through, like, this gigantic cavern.
Yeah, the Gnome King's like, yeah, you and your army.
He's
sure.
He's like, say that to my face, and she falls. And she sees all this emeralds in the mines and stuff, and he's talking to her from off screen. He's like, this is where all the emeralds for the Emerald City came from, and they are all mine, and I was taking them back.
Yeah, so now we kind of get a backstory of why everything kind of fell apart, I
Yeah,
guess.
and it shows her for a hot second seeing the Scarecrow, and she like hugs him, and then he's gone, and I don't know if it was just her imagining it, but Scarecrow's gone, and then the Gnome King's like talking to her. He's another kind of face on the wall at the very beginning here.
Mm-hmm.
So the Gnome King basically says at this point, like, he was like, oh, the Scarecrow was a thief, and I turned him into an ornament for thieving from me. And
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy starts bawling her eyes out, and he's like, well, I didn't know the Scarecrow meant so much to you, so I tells you what, like in that guy in Rebel Moon, I too love to gamble. If you can tame this beast. Now, he's like, I tell you what, I'm going to send, I didn't really catch the rules of the game, but you kind of pick them up as they go, but it's like, you and your friends, and he pulls the other people in, but he's like, go into this room, see if you can pick out where the Scarecrow is. You get 3 guesses. If not, you become mine.
Yeah, you become a knick-knack, because evidently that's what he collects.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, Gump, you're up first. He's like, well, I don't think I could go in there and pick one out. And he's like, but he's like, I don't got no hands, sir. And he's like, but you've got your horns, so touch with your horns. And so it's basically just them waiting, and as they're doing this, the Gnome King is slowly turning into a man. It's like face on the wall, claymation, which I thought, I'm a sucker for these old special effects.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't too impressed. I did think whenever Gump goes in there, he says, I should have quit while I was ahead.
Yeah. I was like you are ahead.
You are ahead, yeah.
But eventually the Gnome King does transform into a man in makeup, and he's like, while the Gump is waiting, let's have some refreshments, and he makes them some limestone pie with melted silver. And I'm like, oh, we're all dying then if we eat this.
Oh, melted silver, ew.
Because she's like drinking it. And I was like, drinking melted silver? Okay, well, you're dead.
Yeah, that's gonna harden on the inside, and that's gonna suck for you.
Well, during this time, Mombi has decided to go to the Gnome King because I think one of the Screechers has told her that they are on the mountain. Mombi is like on this little sled being pulled by the Wheelers and is like whipping them. Like, yeah.
Yeah, she's a witch.
So, surprise, surprise, Gump fails. And now they send in Jack. Jack fails. They send in TikTok, and she winds him up beforehand. He's like my action in my mind, and it takes him forever to get there because he's like But he gets in, and they're waiting, and while they're waiting, this is where we see the Gnome King is like, check out these bitchin' slippers I've got.
What?
They're ruby slippers, and because Dorothy says at the beginning of this, the doctor at the beginning is like, well, how did you get home? She's like, I had the ruby slippers, and they had the most powerful object in Oz or whatever, and I wished my way home. And he's like, well, what happened to him? She's like, I lost him on my way back.
And I'm only 10, so I just lost them.
She's like, I sold them for some bubble gum and some 10-penny candy. But apparently, Gnome King has found them, and this is what has helped him take over the kingdom.
Yeah, and he's like really strutting them.
Which apparently I read, the ruby slippers are not in the original book. They're silver slippers. So the ruby slippers were made just to show off the color in the original one.
Okay.
So they were owned by Warner Brothers, I think who it was. So in order to show them in this movie, they had to pay some money to Warner Brothers to show the ruby red slippers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a wall face comes over to the Gnome King, and he's like, hey, that fat robot dude, he's just standing there doing nothing.
he hasn't chosen. I think he's frozen.
Yeah, and so the king's like, all right, fine, go in there. You wind him up, make him choose, and then it's your turn. And after, if you fail, I win. So Dorothy goes in there, and around this time, Mombi shows up, and she was like, oh, Dorothy, I'm so sorry she got away from me. And he's like, well, she won't be here for long, because once she guesses, she'll be trapped as an ornament. And a thread that's kind of dropped as Mombi's like, once Dorothy is gone, you'll finally be a human.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't really say anything about that.
Because that's why he's changed to be more human.
Yeah.
They were the wrong picks. So, okay.
Yeah, they don't mention that, but I guess you put it together that that's what that's supposed to be. So, Dorothy goes in there and TikTok she winds him back up and he's looking and he's like, I've got a plan. And he tries to choose something and gets turned into an ornament.
Isn't he the third guess?
Mm-hmm.
So they only had 3 guesses.
I think.
So now Dorothy guesses. That's 4 guesses.
Well, she's got 3 of her own.
Oh, each one has 3 guesses.
Each person, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I was just thinking they had each one chose once, and if it was wrong, it was wrong.
No, they get 3.
Oh, because she does. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I totally
See,
did
people,
not.
it takes if it's like a week or something. If it's a few days after you've watched the movie, some of it goes by the wayside.
No, even when I was watching the movie, I'm like, I don't understand how this choose 3 is working here, because I guess I just had it in my mind that they only had each one had 1 pick, but she chooses 3 times anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, because she goes around to a couple different objects and she's like, puts her hand on a vase and she's like, it's nothing.
Yeah, this is also good to listen to different podcasts, as everybody thinks of movies differently.
Yeah.
Like they pick up something different, and I think that's why I like how different we are, because we see things so differently, and hopefully that's why people like to listen to us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, she does that twice and fucks up, and the Gnome King's like, oh, yeah, baby.
I'm almost human.
I'm going to be a human and I can fuck.
I am going to start stroking soon.
Mombi, what are you doing after today? Once you clock out, you want to come over to my place?
Well, we'll try each of your heads on.
How about you give me some head? All of them! It's like, you're not in the mood, but maybe one of your heads are. So Dorothy is walking around and she sees something that looks green. And she's like, green Emerald City. Fuck it, why not? And she's like, Oz, and it's the Scarecrow.
Then everybody's all like, son of a bitch, I didn't think she guessed right.
Yeah, and she's like, all the people from Oz must turn into green objects. And the whole cave is starting to collapse now because the Gnome King's pissed off. He's
yeah.
It's like, God damn it, why did I turn him into green things?
Why was it so obvious?
The Green Emerald City. Fuck. Fuck, I should have done that. Next time I'm doing this all over again. So she's walking around and she finds Jack. She finds Gump. This whole cave collapses because the Gnome King has turned into a gigantic gnome monster.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when you think gnome, you think of kind of like a little small person, but I guess not. He's like a big creature. I'm not exactly sure. They said gnome means something specifically. I can't remember it, but...
Yeah, me neither.
He's pissed. He was like, fuck, you ruined my rigged game. This is bullshit. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home.
Mm-hmm.
So he's...
Sore loser.
Yeah, he's sore loser. He's a huge creature now, and the whole cavern has collapsed, and there's like lava around him, and he picks up the gnome, and he's like, that's it, I'm eating your asses one by one.
Yep.
He picks up the Gump, and the Gump's head falls off, and his body is eaten. So it's just like the head on the plaque. And then he picks up Jack, and he's like, I'm eating your friend now, Jack. And Belina is still inside.
Yeah.
And she has been scared shitless about dying, so she laid an egg. And he's like holding Jack above his mouth, like, blah. And this egg goes down his throat.
Which I read in this area, that's the only time when Jack was claymation.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that.
Because all of this had to be in claymation.
Sure. That's really cool, yeah. I mean, that was really popular. There's the movie Clash of the Titans from like the 60s, 70s. And it's got claymation at the end, and it's done by this really famous dude for doing it, Ray Harryhausen. And it's like, very, very cool.
Huh?
But this egg goes down his throat, and he's like, my allergies!
My throat's gonna close up.
Get me my EpiPen! My throat! My throat! My throat! Someone please give me my food!
Yeah, she's like, because he's like, this is poison, I guess, to
gnomes.
Rocks.
They were like, wait, how is an egg poison to a rock? He's like, don't question it! The movie's almost over, don't question me. Because they're getting chased by like little rock people here, and as soon as the egg goes down the throat, all the rock people are like, poison!
Yeah.
They were like, who has the pen? And they were like, I thought you had it. It's like, oh shit, I forgot to refrigerate it. It's spoiled. Wait, I don't think you have to refrigerate an
I
EpiPen,
have
do you?
no
Yeah.
idea.
Well, there's a American Dad episode where he gives Roger an EpiPen, and when Roger makes him eat shellfish just so he could use it and be special, but by the time that happens, Roger's like, huh, I only used this thing like 3 times. He's like, gave myself a kick, really needed the buzz. So he's like trying to hit it with him, and he's like, oh no, I've used it all up.
No.
So I don't think you have to keep it because,
Yeah, I don't think so either.
keep it refrigerated, so don't
Maybe it's just expired.
write in, yeah. So the Gnome King starts dying. He disintegrates. Dorothy is slowly putting these shoes on. She's like, oh, I gotta wipe these out. These have rocks in them, and they're all sweaty,
Ugh.
and they weren't his size, so he forced his feet into them, so they're stretched out.
Oh, man.
They're like, Dorothy, fucking hurry! And she's like, well, just a second here. I want to look at them real quick. Does anyone have a mirror? And they're like, click your goddamn heels! And she's like, I wish that we were out of here and that the Emerald City and Oz were back to life and everyone was that was a rock are back together, and I wish Auntie M and everybody was fine and that I had a new dog and a horse. It's like, just wish us out of here. Quit putting you can wish for things later.
Keeps listing.
Yeah. So they're outside the Emerald City. They get transported, and they're like, whoo, we're out. And they're like, wait a second. We forgot about TikTok. And wouldn't you know it, the Gump has like a green like badge on his horn. And they're like, oh, I think that might be him. And they're like, Oz. And he turns back into TikTok, and he's like, you sons of bitches forgot about me.
I'd be mad. I mean, he's the one that came up with the plan that saved the day.
Yeah, he's like, I knew you'd forget about me, so when I turned into an ornament, I made sure I was on the Gump. So everything's good now. Like, I guess some time has passed because we see them all marching into the throne room of Oz, and TikTok is now like solid gold.
Solid gold.
Solid gold, baby. Pink, pink. Like, hits himself like Bender.
Yeah.
I'm 40% gold. Tink, tink. And they're all, everybody's back. We see the Tin Man. Dorothy, I think, is riding the lion or is with him. Bellina is on like a cushy pillow that's being carried.
Yeah.
And they're all coming into the throne room. And I read that right here, Firuza Balk passed out in this scene because it was so hot when they were filming it with everything that it was up to like 104 degrees in here.
Holy shit.
I know. But they're all like, Dorothy's the Queen of Oz now, woo! And she's like, well, I can't because the only thing tying me to the other world are my aunt and uncle who are super depressed and living in a shit shack, and I've really got to get back. And one thing we didn't see is that back in the cave before, the Gnome King had imprisoned Mombi in like this cage.
Oh, yeah.
And she is still in the cage, and the women's whose head she took are back, and they are now on their bodies and like kind of carrying her because she is imprisoned. And Dorothy's like, well, I'm sorry, I can't. I would love to take the throne, but I can't. And they see in the mirror that girl again.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if we mentioned it. We've been around kind of all over the place, but in the throne room before, when they're trying to escape from Mombi, Dorothy sees the woman in the mirror again.
Yeah, it's like a blurry light.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
And it turns into the girl from the beginning in the mirror that she saw in the real world. And she's like, help me, Dorothy, step out of this mirror. And she steps out, and it turns out that this is Queen Ozma.
Ozma.
Yeah, she is the daughter of the Wizard of Oz from the first movie.
Oh.
And this is where we get some backstory here. She's like, in case people didn't understand it clearly enough, Mombi imprisoned me because the Gnome King hired her, promised her 30 heads, and she banished me into the mirror and made people forget about me.
Oh.
And she says to Mombi, she's like, well, I would punish you even more, but Dorothy has taken your magic, and that's a life not worth living.
Mm-mm.
Just gives her a gun with one bullet in it.
Your choice.
Yeah. You don't have magic anymore. I will leave this here with you. It's like the end of Slow Horses.
Yeah.
She fires the gun into the floor 5 times. Here you go. I'll leave this here with you.
Because that's how you empty a gun.
Yeah.
You shoot it.
Yeah, there is a scene where Gary Oldman shoots a gun into the floor 5 times. And you said that, like our Mixed Nuts episode, you got to empty a gun by firing it wildly into a room.
Yep. Which does not work out.
So Ozma is like, I am the queen of Oz, and people are like, shouldn't we have an election for this? I don't remember you. Yeah.
I don't really know you that well.
If you say so, you said your name's Oz. Oz, 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 Oz. Ozma Ozzington.
And even, I think, I don't know when it happens, but Jack's like, Mom?
Yeah, he faints too, because he's like,
Oh, yeah.
Mom! And he's like, oh. But the queen is like, Dorothy, I will let you come back to Oz whenever you want. She's like, you just have to click your heels 3 times. So she does, and she's like, well, I don't have time to say goodbye to everybody. I think kind of like the first one. She's like, goodbye, I love you. And she walks into the light. Like, go into the light, Dorothy.
No, Dorothy.
And Dorothy wakes up on the side of the riverbank and is like, I'm back. And Toto, I guess the Auntie Em and the uncle are coming to get her. Toto finds her first in the woods, and they all come back to her and like, Dorothy, oh my God, you're safe. Thank God the hospital you were in last night was hit by lightning and burned to the ground.
Yeah, the uncle was acting his ass off. He did pretty good. He's like found her and he was like, oh my gosh. Like,
yeah.
You could tell that he was like, oh, I missed you.
This has got me out of my slump. I'm back again. And they were like, yeah, everybody was rescued from the clinic except for the doctor who ran back in to get his machines when it burned down. And they're like, let's go home. And like, are you gonna apologize to me for almost getting my mind electrocuted here?
Yeah. Do I get an apology at least?
Yeah, speaking of Jack Nicholson, she almost got Jack Nicholson at the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But they're riding home, and we see these 2 policemen riding by them, and they have Nurse Wilson, Mamby, in the back locked up, and no explanation. They're just like, yeah, she's arrested because they found out what was happening somehow in that burned down clinic.
They were kidnapping kids and torturing them.
Maybe they were like, they found 30 bodies in that burned down clinic.
Oh, dang.
Chained into the basement.
Yikes.
All of them kids.
No.
So they go home, and I guess we didn't say it, but Auntie Em is played by a very well-known actress. Her name is Piper Laurie. She played at a bunch of stuff, but she was Carrie's mom in the movie Carrie, where she's like a really psycho religious woman.
Yeah.
She's really good. She's barely in this, really, but they're back at their new house because Uncle has gotten off his ass.
Yeah, it's completely built. I was like, how long was she gone?
I know. Well, maybe we're supposed to be like a little bit in the future or something. I don't know. But
maybe.
He has gotten off his ass, stopped using the leg, stopped the booze, stopped the pills.
Good for him.
He's like, I tell you what, I'll work every day, and at the end of the day, if I've done this much work, I get a pill. And he's like, okay, I put in a section on, I get a pill.
You gotta treat yourself.
Yeah. Well, Dorothy is like in her room, and she looks into the mirror, and Princess Ozma is like looking back, and she's like, Auntie Em, you have to come see this. And the princess is like, you keep your fucking mouth shut. Snitches get stitches.
We also didn't say that the chicken stayed back in Oz.
Yeah, when they left, she's like, Polina, you staying? She's like, yes, I am.
Yeah, she'll get treated better there. Not get her head cut off, maybe.
Yeah. Not gonna be used to shit out eggs every day. And the aunt is like, Dorothy, what is it? And she's like, never mind. And the aunt's like, well, how about you? Do you love the new house? First off, she's like, you love the house? And Dorothy's like, yes, it's great. For some reason, he made it exactly like the other one instead of adding on or whatever. She's like, he made it exactly. And she's like, how about you go outside and play? And it ends with Dorothy and Toto running around outside playing.
Oh.
And they never made a sequel, which I guess maybe this one wasn't very successful, but maybe if it was, they would have done the others. I don't know.
Maybe. I would say it's too late now.
40 years. They made this one 46 years after the first one. They waiting for 46 years after that one?
I don't know.
2031. is when it will be. So coming 2031,
Ooh,
the
stay
sequel.
tuned. We're gonna write this down and see if it comes true.
Well, there's got to be people that were still alive when the first one was released, like 40 some odd years after. So, like kids probably.
Yeah.
They may be in their 50s or 60s watching this in theaters, and they're like, I remember seeing the first one. I can't wait. What the fuck is this shit?
We'll get Perusa back in here. She'll be
Still
alive.
around, yeah.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, she'll still be alive.
Right. I think she will be.
If she dies recently, do not come and talk to us and be like, well, you said.
Yeah, we can't predict the future.
We may or may not have something to do with it. No.
We just talk out our ass, okay, people?
Yeah. So that's it.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was okay. But I tell you what, if you like our episode, the best thing you can do for us is go to iTunes, give us 5 stars, and if you leave a little message and say your name and where you're from, we'll give you a shout out on one of our episodes. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to write in, the filmobsessedcouple@gmail.com, you can do that as well. And we just really appreciate everybody listening. And you can also tell a friend and share us.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks for listening to us talk about Return to Oz. Next week, it's a movie that I have never heard of. And I thought you were talking about this other one called Munchie, which is also on Amazon for free, where it's kind of like this weird, crazy-looking creature helps a little boy out. But this one is called Munchies, which, reading the description of it, is obviously a Gremlins ripoff.
Yes.
So we will be talking about that. If you want to watch along with us or watch it beforehand, it is on Amazon Prime for free if you have it.
Nice.
I guess not for free, you're paying for Amazon Prime, but it is there to watch. So until next time with Munchies.